Her life wasn't a straight shot. She zigged into law, zagged into education, zigged into film, and built the Jewish Netflix. Welcome back to the Trailblazer Pod. I'm your host Faye, and each week I bring you stories of Jewish women who are paving bold paths. This week, Heidi Oshin, co-founder of Chaiflicks, joins me. She practiced law for 20 years and role-played the misogyny out of every big meeting before she even walked in. She pivoted to teaching, and then launched the largest Jewish streaming service in the world during the first week of COVID. Let's dive in. Oh, and hit follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming. Heidi, welcome to the Trailblazer Pod. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Good, thank you, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. From sunny Los Angeles, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, there's a thing called May gray and June gloom, which we are experiencing.
Oh.
It takes till the afternoon for all the sea air to,
Mm.
the sun to burn through. So,
Okay, so I got the sun for you right now.
yeah.
Okay, so in this podcast, we tend to go all the way back to childhood. So I want to start with you grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you grew up in a really
Yes.
tight-knit Jewish community. What did
Very
that
tightly
feel
knit.
like? Yeah, some really cool Jewish history too. What did it feel like from your worldview living inside of that community? What did that give you?
It was a tightly knit but very close community. So the relationships I formed back then, I'm still friends with those people.
Wow,
There's a Facebook group for everybody in my group who grew up in Harrisburg, and we're all still involved in each other's lives.
that's
So I
amazing.
think it formed genuine
Mhm.
relationships. We had to.
That's so cool. I think that's very rare these days.
Yeah, yes. We always remark about that. I mean, I have friends that I've known since pre-nursery school.
Wow, how
Yeah,
cool. That's
yeah.
beautiful. How would you describe yourself as a little girl?
I was adventurous.
Mm.
I didn't like to sit still. Um, I was a little tomboyish back, what they called that back then, but I was I was very concerned about the world, even back then.
Mm.
Um, my teachers used to have to sit with me after classes and kind of reassure me that the world was going to be okay. Um,
Really?
Part of that, I think, is that there were a lot of survivors who lived in Harrisburg, and I was friends with their children. So I think there was a lot of anxiety about that.
It's interesting because my great grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and I know that my grandmother's generation, so the children of Holocaust, they still felt that very much in their day-to-day lives. But I think, as the great granddaughter, it's a little bit removed. So you just hear the
Sure,
stories, but it sounds like you were that next generation. Why do you
correct.
think, I feel like little girls, even back then, if you grew up with these, why do you think you had this sense of worrying about it so much? Is it a personality trait of yours?
I probably,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I worry a lot. I mean,
Okay.
that's in my
No, but
DNA, you know?
okay. Yeah, but I mean it's cool because we're gonna tie it back full circle almost of, what your work today focuses on, right?
Right,
So that's cool
right,
how that brought you to where you are today. You also,
right.
I grew up very religious. So to me, summer camp was just an extension of my regular school. So I never saw it as this,
Uh,
beautiful experience. But then I had some other guests on that didn't grow up that way, and summer camp was like their Jewish connection, their time to like hang out with all their Jewish friends, and it really left an imprint, which reframed things for me. And it sounds like it was a similar experience for you.
Totally, totally.
You attended
Um,
a camp called Luis, right? And
Camp Louise, which was
yeah.
part of it was founded by Aaron and Lillian Strauss, and it was originally founded for girls who worked in the sweatshops in Baltimore so that they would have a place to go in the summer. So it was part of
Wow.
the, I don't know if it was part of the Federation, but it was part of a big Jewish organization. I don't know, recall which one it was. So that was the genesis of it. And there was a
Wow.
girls' camp called Louise and a boys' camp called Airy, which was like 10 or 15 miles away. So I went to camp with 500 girls for
Wow.
13 summers, and the camp was only run by women.
Oh my gosh, 13 summers. That's basically your whole childhood or teenage life. Wow.
Yep, yep,
And some really cool women came out of that camp, right?
yeah.
Did you have a sense when you were in camp? Obviously, looking back, you can see this, but while you were in camp, did you feel like that camp or the place produced a certain type of woman?
Well, I do think so. I think because there were no men around, so women
Mm.
held all the leadership positions.
Oh.
I remember my greatest role model was the head of the pool because I was a big swimmer and I lifeguarded and I taught swimming. And she was dynamic. She was this
Mm.
like take charge woman, and she just ran the pool as
Wow.
well as anybody can for 500 kids. I mean, it was amazing.
I love that you brought that up because sometimes it sounds like you're very observant and you pick things up because you're saying you as a kid you're like worrying about the world and now you're noticing this woman is managing 500 other children, and I think a lot of kids don't pick up those little bits and pieces, but it is really cool how sometimes when you were older we look at all these people in like the cool positions and we forget that somebody like managing a pool is holding all this incredible leadership experience. But it's
Right.
amazing that you were able to recognize that as a young girl.
Yeah. There were a lot of characters, but they it was extremely well run and it was a fun place to be. And again, I go back to camp reunions.
Oh,
I went back for the 100th anniversary of the camp. I still am very close to my bunkmates.
that's so
So,
cute. That's
they
so
were
special.
long-term relationships were formed there as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. So you ended up pursuing law and you worked in law for a nice chunk of your life.
Yes, I did.
Why did you choose to pursue that career?
Because I wanted to be a city planner when I was in
Mm,
college. And my brother said to me, this was before, well, it was a different time for women back then.
mm,
And my brother said to me, go to law school because with a law degree, you'll always get a job. And if you get a master's in city planning, you're subject to the
mm.
whims. And, I went to, it was an unusual thing because you needed a certain kind of graduate degree as a woman to be able to like hold your own. So I went to law school.
Yeah. So you mentioned, it was a different time for women. So I want to ask you,
Yes.
obviously, you chose this degree because you knew it's going to help you. But what was it like being a lawyer as a woman during those
It
days?
was not easy. It was
Mm,
not easy to get respect. I'll never forget. There was one situation I was in. For a while, I worked in-house for a real estate company,
mm,
a huge real estate company in Westchester, New York.
mm,
And I was negotiating a lease, and I was the only woman. It was a huge lease and a lot of money involved, and I was the only woman in the room. And there were a guy, and I role played it several nights in it
mm.
beforehand so I would know how to handle myself because they were misogynistic and
Wow.
dismissive
Mm.
and I commanded the room. I mean, it was not easy back then.
How did you handle it? Can you give us an example?
I can't really give that as an example, but I know that I was not. I mean, there was a lot of sweet talk, honey, and I just shut it down. Um,
You're like, not
yeah,
today.
not today.
Yeah.
I'm all business here.
Yeah.
Um, but
Did it ever create a sense of imposter syndrome for you?
of course,
Yeah.
totally. That's why
So,
I had a role play.
okay. So this is something that comes up. Obviously, we're in 2026, but women are still in some ways fighting for a seat at the table, right? And it does create or perpetuate the sense of imposter syndrome for a lot of us even today. So can you give us a piece of advice of, how obviously you role played, but what would you say to, a young woman who's, it's the first time she's sitting in a room and she's the only woman and she's feeling the sense of imposter syndrome? What's some practical things she can do to kind of just do it anyway?
What I learned is that the men at the table also have imposter syndrome.
Mm,
So that levels the playing field.
mm,
And if you can use that to your advantage, then you're ahead of the game.
that's so smart. We always focus on ourselves, right? And we don't like zoom out and be like, oh, they're just people too. They just
Right,
they
exactly.
exude maybe more confidence and pretend maybe a little bit better, or we
Yeah, they
think
have
they
more,
do.
yeah, they have a
Yeah.
macho appearance, but underneath it, they're just quivering like the rest of us.
I love that. So even during that time, from what I read and understand, there was apparently you had this passion for film still like underneath all of it. Is that correct?
Because growing up, my father and brother would watch on television every single sports event possible. I don't care if it
Yeah.
was tractor pulling or whatever it was. And my parents were New Yorkers, so my mom was pretty sophisticated. So we would go to the other television in the house and we would watch old movies. So I had a really sweet connection to film back
Mm-hmm.
then, but it taught me, I mean, I was introduced to the Marx Brothers as a little girl
Mm.
and Sophia Loren as a little girl and Audrey Hepburn. So yes, so I
Wow.
had a passion for film and stories. Mostly it was like stories.
Storytelling.
Hmm.
Again, it alludes to what you do today, but at that point, did it ever feel like maybe, some of us have these passions as young kids, and then we, pursue the reasonable career, and it's always like this lingering of, oh, I wish I can do something with that. Did you ever feel that during that time, or it was just, something that was a side thing, and then later on in
It,
your life it came up as,
it was more of a side thing then
mm,
because again, I a Jewish kid from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, what are you
mm.
gonna do, you know?
Yeah, you don't gotta say no more. That's funny.
Right.
So at some point you left, you were in law for 20 years, right? And then you left law and you got a master's in education, which is really cool. And then you built a program for children with special needs. We
Right.
don't have to go too much into that, but what I appreciate about this is that you really pivoted, right? And you did
Yes.
something completely different. So, can you talk to me a little bit about that shift? Like what happened during that time in your life that you're like, okay, law's done. I'm going to go and pursue something so different.
I I never enjoyed practicing law.
Okay.
I'm not big on conflict, you
Yeah.
know. So if you're not big on conflict, law's
It's
not
hard.
necessarily the
Yeah.
best thing for you. And as a child, I was not, I had very big difficulty learning to read. I was smart, but I couldn't read. And I knew that there were other kids like me. So I got very interested in the whole field of what's called twice exceptional children,
Mhm.
kids who are highly gifted, but somehow don't fit in the regular classroom. They're on the spectrum or they have
Mhm.
dyslexia or other other challenges that make it hard for them. And they're a very vulnerable population. I remember at some point I did some research on it, and the number of kids in that were in juvie halls, juvenile delinquent
Mm.
hall, they a lot of them were twice exceptional. So they
Wow.
are very vulnerable, and so I wanted to find a way to engage those kids. And so we started a program in the Scottsdale School District for twice exceptional children.
Wow. I recently had, it's very funny, like this past month, I had a couple of founders, like really successful and incredible female founders. And I did all this research, I came prepared for the interview, and then when I asked them about what their childhood was like, a couple of them were like, I did really bad in school. I couldn't read. I had a learning disability. I was like, wow, like nobody talks about this, but if they're given the right tools in other ways of their life, they end up being
That's right.
incredibly successful. So,
My son also kind of fit into that role, and we had a pediatrician who told me, "Don't worry about it. He's listening to everything, and
mm,
he's actually more creative and imaginative because it's not tied to the text. He's thinking
right.
about the story in his head."
That's a
So,
great perspective.
yeah,
I feel like the more people you have around you that can see that, and then the more people that talk about that kind of stuff, then somebody listening can start seeing it in a different perspective. Because I think when you're so close to it, it's hard to, you get nervous, right? You get nervous, you
right,
get
right.
scared, you're like, this is not what I'm used to, and it's hard to see that other side of the coin.
But it's also very motivating to come out of a situation where you had some difficulty and to be able to succeed over that.
Mm,
You're like, then you can conquer the world, you know?
right. Yeah, and all of us have, I think, some version of that. I think the people who are successful have almost like that chip on the shoulder or the nose they were told over and over again, and then it's like,
Right,
I told you so, right? It's like, I think we
right,
can all relate
exactly.
that in some way. When you were kind of making this pivot and you made another one, which we'll talk in a minute, did you, this is kind of like after 20 years of having a career, were you nervous to make a change or
No,
no?
no,
It was
no.
just like, this is it, this is the right time. Okay,
Yes.
I love that.
Like I said, I never really enjoyed practicing law,
Mm.
so ooh, I found a way out.
Interesting. I just feel like so many times women feel like if they pivot or like closing one door and another door opens, it's from what I've noticed having women on the podcast, it takes a little bit of time where that gap is, oh, I just maybe I didn't maybe I failed a little bit and that's why I had to start. And I think reframing that pivots are okay and it's actually a strength to see when something is kind of done for you.
One
Is
of
that
the
how you
things that
saw
I
it?
learned in studying for my master's was the concept of lifelong learning, and
Mm,
I felt like that's what I was doing. Oh,
I
I
love
learned
that.
that. Now I can learn something
Yeah.
else, and for me, it made it more exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm kind of similar. I constantly am like, but it took me, I'm 30. It took me a couple of years to let go of the judgment of that because when I was in school, I was told, or even my friends, one was studying accounting and now for the rest of her life she's in accounting and I was just constantly making those changes. I'm like, what? Why am I doing that? But my life is so much more exciting. And I see that
Yes,
now as a strength as I talk to women who've done it before. So, speaking of pivots, you made another one, and you and your partner Neil launched Chaiflicks, right? Is it Neil?
right, Neil.
Okay. And you guys launched this the same week that basically the world shut down and COVID happened, correct? So,
Yeah.
first of all, what's Chaiflicks? Give us a little bit of like the elevator pitch and where you guys came up with this idea.
So Heiflix is a streaming service dedicated to presenting Jewish themed stories, and it we have both documentaries, narratives, long form, short form. We have a few dance videos. We have some music videos. We have some cooking shows. We wanted to be the repository, if you will, the archive for Jewish stories from across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
So while a lot of the programming does come from either North America or Israel, we have programs from Poland, from Austria, from Germany, from Italy. We have something from Vietnam.
Wow.
We have from 6 of the 7 continents. So far, we don't have any penguin stories from Antarctica.
Yeah.
So the reason we started Highflix was before the pandemic. We we have another company called Menemsha Films, and it's an
Mm-hmm.
all rights distribution company that specializes in Jewish themed products. We're
Mm-hmm.
the only company in the world that only handles Jewish
Wow.
themed films, and we supply the the unbelievable number of Jewish film festivals with a majority of their programming. And um, we used to sell we had very successful films and we would sell them to Netflix. But
Mm-hmm.
Netflix changed its algorithm and they stopped buying our kinds of films. They stopped buying foreign films for a while. They were producing
Mm.
their own content. And we had this back catalog of wonderful films that nobody was able to access. So we knew at some point we had to start a streaming service.
Mm.
Well, the pandemic happened, and the first week we just launched it, and we launched it with a lot of Menemsha's back catalog.
Mm.
But week two, we went out scouring the world for additional programming. So that's the
Wow.
genesis of Highflix.
Wow. And like obviously the pandemic was horrible, but it probably people were sitting at home and they needed stuff to watch, right?
Yeah,
It's like your
yeah.
customer is right there. What drives you personally to be so passionate about bringing these films and these stories to the public?
Because they're they say that trauma is generational, like it carries
Yes, they
across
do.
all the Well,
Yeah.
Jewish stories are like that. I mean, it's our
Yeah.
history. and they're very rich. The stories
Yeah.
are dynamic and compelling and engaging, and it's nice to know that there's a place where you can access all of that. They're also funny and
Mm.
hilarious, so it's not all
Yeah.
serious stuff. But it's our history. We
Yeah.
have an oral tradition. It's all about stories.
100%. I actually checked out the platform and it's wonderful. And I don't have a lot of time now, but I added a lot of stuff that I need to watch that I never would have known existed, and
Right.
now it's all sitting in one place. And I obviously showed my whole family. So, part of part of your work is scouring for those stories, like you were saying. What
Right.
makes a good story in your opinion? Like what's a story where you're like, oh, this is something I want to bring.
Well, it's interesting because I'm the only woman co-founder. The other two are
Mm,
men,
yeah.
and I sometimes like things that they don't like, and
Mm,
they like things that I don't like. So
yeah.
for me, it's a story about rich characters, and I don't mean monetarily. I
Mm,
mean that have some something in the story that conveys a meaning to me.
mm,
Um, but that being said, I love every police detective story in the world because of the strong characters.
yeah.
They don't like that. They they're much more serious. They
Hmm.
can't go with that. So it's fun to compare and contrast.
And I'm sure it brings a good balance because you probably have the audience is probably split that way as well, and you're able to.
Well, the audience to date has been largely me. It's
Oh,
women
really?
of a certain generation with a certain
Interesting.
educational background. So I am the demographic.
That's cool. Okay,
Um,
so they listen to
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Why do you think that's the demographic right now? That's like mostly coming to the
Um,
platform.
I'd be curious to know on like Netflix and other platforms who the demographic is, but
Mm.
um, it's either I choose something or we watch sports in my house. So I don't want to watch
That's
sports. I
such a
want to
good
watch a
point.
story. So, yeah, I don't, that may be part of it.
Yeah, that's
I
very
also
funny.
read a lot of novels. So for
Mm.
me, it's like visualizing the novel.
Right, right. So you've said, or I've seen and I've read that a lot of the Chaiflicks library and what's offered is of the Holocaust, obviously. But you said the richness of Jewish culture is so much more than that. So how do you balance honoring the history while also, insisting on the full picture of who we are, history, but also today?
It's an interesting balance because you still have to have programming that people want to watch. And sometimes watching Holocaust stories is like going back to school. So
Mm.
it has to have a balance. There has to be a give and a take with that.
Do you feel like almost like it's three separate careers or three separate lanes. Do you feel like it was just an evolution and you brought yourself, you were a lawyer and you brought parts of yourself to the next thing and then the next thing, or do you feel like it was a reinvention? Like, how do you view that part of your life?
No, I just feel like it's an extension. I mean, all
Yeah.
the skills that I've learned along the way, I'm dealing with now. For a while, there's contracts involved. Neil mostly handles those, but I'm involved in that. And then for the educational part, for a long time, we used to create study guides for Menemsha to go with the programs, the films, so that they could be used for educational purposes. So
Mm,
that I still see programming through that light. What is this teaching me?
mm.
What can be conveyed to any population, any age group?
I think that's important for people to hear because kind of back to our discussion about pivoting, sometimes people feel like, oh, I wasted my degree or I wasted this. And I agree with you. You never lose the real life skills that you've learned in one area. And they
Correct.
always kind of, it's like, you're putting the layers on top of the onion. Usually we shed them back, but this
Correct.
time we're adding
Yeah.
new layers. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that,
Yeah.
Anne.
So really you're a founder, right? So obviously you're involved in this like Jewish culture, history and art, but you're also a founder and a business owner. Has there been a time of like a difficult time in building Highflix that the outside world wouldn't have seen, but you guys were dealing with this internally? Because I think founder life is you have two co-founders, which is beautiful, but it's kind of a lonely road and process that kind of happens behind the doors and then people just see the output. and the outcome.
Yeah. You're always reevaluating. Did we make the right decision? Is this the right path for us?
Hmm.
What can we do to reach a different audience? Where should we advertise?
Hmm.
It comes down to real nuts and bolts. And yes, it can be lonely because there are no right answers. They're the best you can do. So it is like that.
How do you balance wanting something to be perfect, but also the concept of you gotta just put it out and go for it? Do you have that struggle?
Well, yes, it's a constant conversation because I keep saying to my partners,
Yeah.
it's step by step, and they keep wanting to see the whole picture right away. But
Yeah.
nothing works like that, and
Yeah.
and I think my life has been like that, step
Hmm.
by step by step, all these
Right.
different changes.
Building the blocks.
Yes.
Has starting, during COVID, week one of COVID, has it shifted or changed and in ways that were unexpected?
I don't think it's so much about COVID anymore, but there's just so much programming out in the world
Mm.
that how you're competing for eyeballs.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do
And
that?
that's that's the
That's the
question we
million
battle with
dollar
all the
question.
time. If you have an answer to that, let me
Yeah,
know.
will do. But I think you're way more the expert in this field than I am. But how do you like personally deal with the weight of this kind of these stories that you're telling? Because a lot of them are heavy stories. You have to. It's about our history. It's about a culture, like you're saying. This like tradition of oral storytelling that we have in Jewish culture. Does that ever I wouldn't call it a burden, and I'm sure you wouldn't call it a burden, but it's a responsibility, right?
It's a responsibility, is
So
exactly right.
how do you deal with that?
We struggle with that all the time because all of these stories deserve attention. And And all of the filmmakers deserve attention and recognition for what they do.
Yeah.
And so we really try to highlight different themes, different programs, so that we can show respect for all of this wonderful work.
Can you think of a piece of advice or something that you wish you would have known going into this that you now realize that maybe can help somebody who's, at the start of their founder journey or doing something new?
You have to have a dream and believe in it. You just have to believe.
Yeah. Do you think it helps to have your co-founders? Like, do you guys keep reminding yourselves, like each other?
Yes, we do. And it's not always in a very civil tone of voice, but yes.
I like the honesty. So,
Yeah.
Heidi, you've been through different iterations or building blocks, like we called it. And I would say, you might think it's just your life, but that's like pretty brave to do, to be able to know when to let go of something and when to do something new. And you've done that multiple times. What would you say to the Jewish woman who's listening right now and sitting on that next chapter, but not yet willing to make the next move?
That's an interesting question. You just have to go for it because life is not easy and it's short, and you may as well make the most of it while you're here. Um, I've seen too much suffering. I've experienced enough pain. Um, so the rest of it, if you believe in a dream, go for it. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. I think hearing stories like yours, and part of the reason why I have the podcast is because it's really important to have inspiration, right? Because otherwise we can sit with all these thoughts and just be like, oh, this is just the dream I have. But if you hear people talk about the dream they had and now they're doing something about it and it turned into something and it was worthwhile, then it gives us a little bit of inspiration to maybe take that leap for ourselves. So I appreciate you
Right, right.
sharing that. What do you think? My last question. What do you think little Heidi and Camp Louise would think of you now?
She'd crack up. um,
Yeah.
she, yeah, that little Heidi didn't know what the future had in store for
Mm,
her, but I think she'd be very proud
mm.
of the road this other Heidi has taken.
What do you think would be like, you're saying she'd crack up, what do you think would be the funniest part or the most unexpected part?
That my life wasn't a straight shot.
Mm,
That
yeah.
it took zigs and zags.
Yes, zigs and zags. Maybe that's the title of this episode. Because like I really relate to it, and it's something like genuinely that I bring up in my episodes a lot, because when I was starting out this podcast, I was going through that myself. And having it, obviously I started this podcast for younger Jewish women and women of all ages to learn, but I found that I was kind of learning and evolving and growing as I was talking to these women, and it kind of gave me this sense of like confidence and hope and inspiration that me making those zigzags was not necessarily a bad thing, right? And now in hindsight, I
Right.
can see that. But so I relate to that zigzag part a lot, and I think more people need to share that. I think a lot of us maybe, glaze over that part of our lives and make it seem like, we had the plan the whole time, we knew what we were doing, and it's just not authentic, and it's
No,
not. I love the
no.
face
What
you're
are they?
making. For anyone
No.
listening, she's making a face like, ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You
Yeah, that's not
know,
real life, right?
what is it? Man makes plans and God
God
laughs. Is that,
laughs. I use
yeah,
that quote all the time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Heidi, thank you so much for coming on here and for doing the work you're doing. Like, it's really important, I think, obviously after October 7th, but even now, and as hopefully nothing happens, but to keep that Jewish culture alive. And, you know, obviously history repeats itself, but beyond that, knowing where we come from and what our stories are like, and all the aspects of, and where there's so many different parts of Jewish culture. There's, there's the Ashkenazi, the Sephardi, there's different countries,
Right.
there's so much that goes into it. And as a sociology major, I really appreciate it from that perspective as well. But you're really doing important work making sure these
Thank you.
stories are living on and
Thank you.
highlighted. So thank you so much, Heidi. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Faye.